Alright, I got a little bit of a confession to make. Not every single NERF mod project that I do hits the channel in full capacity like a dedicated video. Sometimes I make stuff and I just can't think of a way of presenting it. Or more often than not, I can't think of a way of finishing the project to make it presentable. Now, this doesn't mean I'm not going to finish projects. I actually have at least 3 or 4 that I know that are pretty close to completion that just need a little bit of TLC to make it look good for a video, and I'll be finishing those in the future. We just kind of relying on funding to get the workbench up and running for the actual studio that we have here, which, hey, a free way of helping the channel is by hitting that like button, leaving a comment down below, maybe telling me to finish one of these things, and of course hitting the subscribe button, because most of the people who watch my videos actually aren't subscribed, which is kind of flippin' weird. You may think you're subscribed, but you're probably not, so please do so. All those things help the channel grow and thus help the hobby grow. But there's one thing that I built that worked absolutely amazingly, and yet I never did a dedicated video on it because I just couldn't think of a way to make it pretty. And that's this thing. This is a project that I'm going to tell you what it is, then I'm going to tell you why I did it, and overall show you how effective it is, because it's honestly scarily effective, really, really good, especially for something this old, and it's been perfectly usable since day one, and yet I just, look at it, this, that's not very pretty. So OG Fuzzlers would know what this is, and that is, of course, the Adventure Force Commandfire. But this one has been cut down. There used to be like a grip back here and stuff, and big barrels and stuff up here. All that stuff's gone. It's been pared down to its essential components. The hopper, because this is a hopper-fed blaster, and the flywheels and the electronics and everything you'd need to actually make it shoot stuff. So that means if I flip this switch here, still shoots like a dream. Oh, I love it. Now, to explain how we got here, there's a couple of things I need to cover. And honestly, the trigger system, I'm pretty impressed that my stupid face came up with this one. So the blaster is now arm mounted, and it's arm mounted in a specific way that I can still actually reach down and pick things up, like darts and everything like that, without the blaster being in the way. It is heavy and bulky and cumbersome, but it doesn't actually prevent me from doing those actions. And because hoppers don't usually work all that good as a stationary kind of thing, and the fact that hoppers are not exactly all that reliable for a primary blaster because they happen to have jams that happen that prevent you from actually firing them, turning one into a kind of secondary or tertiary blaster when it's mounted to your arm fixes all those issues. I'm not reliant on this blaster to get me tags, it's just something I have on my body that I could use when I need it. This is kind of an important thing because this blaster can be used as a secondary or a sidearm or whatever you want to call it if you're caught reloading with your pants down. However, that also means that I can just use this blaster to help my primary keep its magazine full. I don't always have to empty my primary, I can sprinkle in shots with this Arm Mounted Commandfire here, and that is a very important tool, especially during HVZ. I used this blaster during Ragnaroktoberfest 2018, which is what I built it for, to help conserve primary ammo. So when I wasn't really under threat, but I wanted to tag people out at a safe distance, I could rely on the gauntlet. But when things got hairy, not only did I still have the gauntlet to hopefully fire, but I had my primary blaster still topped up to go. But of course, it's full auto, and it's a flywheeler. Which means you have to have a rev trigger and a firing trigger, both of which are electronic, thankfully, and I've made a mechanical way of doing that, as you can kind of see by the literal rusted keyring, because this is an old project, and the yo-yo string. This blaster actually has 2 positions. If I just kind of flex my wrist a little bit, kind of push my pinky out and flex, it will rev. And if I do it a little bit more, it will fire. That easy. How exactly is that done? Now, I'll be the first one to admit here that your buddy Walcom isn't exactly the brightest tool in the crayon box. But this monstrosity makes me happy. I just utilized a bunch of junk to make this blaster work. So first off, 2 very clicky, very powerful, very big micro switches. Far too big for what we have going on here, and it's actually working with the wheel from an old 3D printer being spring-loaded with a screw drilled into it. All that happens is the screw has the yo-yo string tied to it, which is routed through the blaster. I pull on the yo-yo string, and it actually lifts off the first micro switch, which starts revving the blaster. That's just your typical blaster rev switch, just wired in reverse. And then, as I pull a little bit more, it pushes on the firing trigger. And basically what's happening here is when I pull the string just a little bit, it lets off that bottom micro switch, which starts revving. And when I pull it all the way, gotta be careful what's actually in front of this now. I got a whole wall of beautiful blasters here. It hits the other micro switch, which starts the full auto thing, which starts it firing. Literal trash being used to power this blaster, and yet it works beautifully. One of the dumbest things I have ever made, and I'm surprised just how well it works. And of course, we needed a new battery tray, so I just kind of put a kill switch right here. I put a little shelf in here with plexiglass, with a battery, LiPo, 3S LiPo, because these are Kraken motors. I don't remember what actual flywheels I used. They're white ones with a little bit of concavity to them, but not much. The weirdest part is, I remember this thing hitting ridiculously hard, like 170. It was like my strongest flywheeler, so let's see if that memory holds up after all these years. You know, after seeing these numbers, I'm convinced I wasn't entirely wrong. Now, this is a pretty tricky blaster to chronograph because it's kind of hard to single fire, but you can see 155, 159s, worn darts, lower battery at this point. It's not fully charged, but man, that is still really freaking powerful. Outside is another story entirely. This thing hits hard. It goes far. Now, it should be obvious that it's incredibly hard to aim with this basically non-existent barrel, but it does go the distance, even with just a slight angle on it. I love this blaster. This thing is so freakishly usable, and if you want to tone it down for HVZ like I did, you just slam a 2S LiPo in it, and it goes shorter distance, but it's well under the FPS cap. So having this arm mounted means it's easy to fill up the hopper, it's easy to agitate the hopper, it's not a primary blaster, so if it does stop firing, it's not a huge deal. It's just kind of usable as a secondary. I can have another blaster in this hand and a blaster in this hand. If they're both flywheelers, use all three of them at the same time. There's no problem doing that. Yeah, it's a ridiculously good system. Now, the actual mounting hardware here, that is all a custom job by me, and it's not great at all. I have learned a lot since then, but it's fit to me and it works rather well. You can actually see on the side that I used half of an Alpha Trooper pump in order to mount one of the brackets, but hey, as long as it works. And it's not the most comfortable thing in the world, but hey, I've worn it for hours and I didn't really have too much of a problem with it, and it was reliable every single time I tried to fire it. But the problem is, I don't know how to make something like this pretty. I wanted to put like a spinny barrel on it, but I would have to have that barrel kind of flip up and down, which is a lot harder than you would think. But I tried a couple of different barrels and was never really happy with the results. There was one thing I did want to do, and that was to convert it into a chainsaw looking thing, because our mounted chainsaw thing, even though it wouldn't actually chainsaw, would be super cool. And I have all the materials for doing that I found over the years. But again, we're talking about a mechanism to make that blade kind of flip up and run, which is totally possible, but a little bit beyond the amount of effort that I wanted to put into this project at the time. Those are some ideas, and I can also try to convert it into some kind of shield, but most wars don't allow like arm-mounted shield blaster kind of thing, so I wanted to keep it to where I could use it in pretty much any scenario. And in fact, if you put in a 2S LiPo, it hits under 130, which makes it perfectly usable for HVZ, which something like this would excel in. And yes, I did plan on making 2 of them, but I only ever got the 1 done, which does work because really, you only kind of need the 1. It would just be super fun to have 2 of them. And I was trying to just use the weaknesses of the blaster to make something that would be far better for it. And this is something that I kind of wish like Dart Zone would make themselves or something like that. This is a really nice little system, and that's the only reason why it couldn't actually just be done. I mean, maybe the little pinky trigger thing takes a little bit of effort, but I've seen a lot of like wearable blasters from people, and they almost always have like a handle, which one of my original ideas was to have a handle that could flip down and you would grab and fire it, or they have like a glove with micro switches, or even two kind of keyring things. But this one keyring setup I've had for years, and it's never really been a problem. I've never really had an issue. Even if I just rank on it, it just starts firing. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to think about it. But if I want to hold it out and rev it up to max, it's really easy to do, even if I have another blaster in my hand. Yeah. A really sweet setup in my opinion, but of course I need to know what yours is, because I'm obviously going to be biased because I built it. And do you think I should spend the time and effort to get this up and running? And what do you think? Spinny barrel that flips up, or chainsaw blade? I have like a Halloween chainsaw I got with a kind of rubbery running blade that could very easily be used on this. So you should let me know down in the comment section. Should I try to finish that? Do you have any ideas on how to make something like this pretty? Because I've already pared it down about as much as you possibly can. So trying to build something on top of this is a bit of an ordeal. But that's all I've got for you. I'm Walcom S7. Chances are if you watch this video all the way to the end, you like what we do here. So please hit like, leave a comment down below, and most importantly, subscribe, because I've got a lot more cool stuff coming for you. I'm just kind of reviewed out, a little burnt out of reviewing product. I kind of want to just do something a little bit different, and this was a nice change to show off something that I'm proud of, that works really good, that I would be able to take to pretty much any war right now and have a ton of fun with it. Oh, man. Oh, I forgot how cool this thing. I literally have not worn this in a very long time. Thank you very much for watching this video, and of course, I hope to see you in an entirely different one.
You gotta up,